What's up, everyone? Welcome to my corner of the internet. I'm your host, Ryan Cramer, and this is Crossover Commerce, presented by PingPong Payments, the leading global payments provider helping sellers keep more of their hard-earned money. What's up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in. I'm Ryan Cramer, the host of Crossover Commerce. You've made it. You've made it to the right destination. You're here. I appreciate you tuning in to us live on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter, or if you're listening to us later on, thanks for tuning in and subscribing to your favorite podcast destination and making us one of those great podcasts that you listen to on a daily basis. I appreciate that. But like I said, I'm Ryan Cramer, the host of Crossover Commerce. This is my corner of the internet where I bring you the best and brightest of the Amazon and e-commerce community. I bring it all in one to make sure that you, the listener, who are going to be listening or watching to us today, are going to get something out of this. You want to learn and grow your business, your mindset, your philosophy, just your education. This is the place to be. And my focus is on the Amazon and e-commerce space, but we're also going to be diving into some of the outside factors that apply to the space. Yesterday, we talked about social media ads and just Facebook ads in general, how to build a brand. And today, I'm really excited to be talking about taking that brand to the next level. It's not just companies out there who are doing this. This is family. This is the quote unquote aggregator space. We're going to be diving right into this. And again, a lot of people know there's so many out there, but we're going to dive into this family run operations Olsam group. If you've never heard of them, they're actually based out of England. So they're focused on European expansion, but also brands in the United States, which I really find fascinating, the European growth of businesses and brands, but then also what that looks like on a global scale, how to build that internationally. I know a lot of brands are focused in the United States, but what's that look like on an international scale? So we can dive into that today. But before we do, I want to give a shout out to always Crossover Commerce is presented by PingPong Payments. Who's PingPong Payments, you might ask? Well, let me tell you, PingPong Payments helps brands all over the world send and receive money at a low rate, helping you send money to VAs, suppliers, manufacturers, even employees at a low cost rate in their own currency. And you could do that with a PingPong account. Don't go to a different country and fly there and open a bank account. It's a huge mess. It's a time waste. Don't do that. Use PingPong Payments, helping you save time, money, and effort, which everyone wants to do. And if you're selling in international marketplaces like Sam and his team are doing, who is our guest today, you're going to be needing a solution like PingPong Payments. Go and check that out later on and sign up for a PingPong account today. It's free to do. You can go ahead and click on that link in the show notes below, or you can go ahead and mention Crossover Commerce when you talk to one of our lovely people over in our offices. Thank you, PingPong Payments, for sponsoring Crossover Commerce. That being said, this show is about not myself, but it's about my guest. I wanted to bring on one of the foremost experts in the Amazon space. He actually used to work for Amazon in that space, has a playbook that knows how to grow brands, how to grow international businesses quickly and scale them profitably as well. And he's also doing this with his brother. So it's a family affair. That's why I titled this episode, A Family Affair, Elevating Brands to New Heights. Welcome to Crossover Commerce, Sam Horbye of, I'm going to say it's Olsam group. Sam is going to correct me if I'm wrong. If I butchered that, Sam, you got to let me know that.
Very smooth. You did a great job.
Look at that. Well, I appreciate you hopping on today. Thanks for joining Crossover Commerce, man.
Well, thanks for having me, Ryan. As I said in my my post, I've seen a lot of your podcasts, and your previous guests and yourself have amazing backgrounds. I don't. I'm in our office in one of our meeting rooms. It's a very sort of plain white wall, so I should have probably prepared a really cool sort of background behind, but I don't have that, unfortunately. But
so this is the trick, Sam. I have to keep people on their toes. I don't like people getting complacent, and I've only done 130 something of these episodes, so people need to see something different, some flashy. I might have a different background, and a lot of people in my space, they get, I like to be visually appealing, and I like to throw up some of the things that excite about me and drive me on a day-to-day basis. And it's a nice constant reminder of that, but I appreciate the kind words, like you said in your post. I like it when people reach out to me, which is what you did. You reached out and we had a conversation about your philosophy on building brands. And I find that so fascinating, especially in this space. It's the hot topic, if you will. You and I both know you just got an email. You were saying that you couldn't go to Prosper Show just this morning, which is unfortunate because it was last week. But that being said, you and I were not there, but that seemed to be, from what I felt, the buzzy. Everyone was talking about it. I know the minds of like Thrasio, Elevate Brands, Perch, lots of money being raised happened to be announced then. But that's not all sunshine and rainbows. Obviously, there's other companies like yourself that are just doing different things that you're kind of going maybe against the grain, I would say. So I'm curious your philosophy, who you are, why you decided to get in this crazy, fast-moving pace, and like what drives you and your team kind of to innovate and grow and move forward.
Yeah, cool. So I think first of all, it's a bit of background to myself and Ollie. So we are brothers, Ollie and I. He's the much taller brother, I have to say. If you meet him in person, it's funny actually. Our team is mostly remote, so when our new joiners meet him, wow, this guy's huge. But anyway, we're both brothers. Essentially, we have very different skill sets. He used to work, in private equity, investment banking. He's very much on the kind of the finance side. I'm not a finance guy at all, and what kind of blew me away throughout the fundraising process of getting Olsam going, and also meeting a lot of the other founders in this space, like they are incredible entrepreneurs. The other founders who started, companies like ours, but typically they come from a private equity finance background. I don't have that, and so I used to work for Amazon for a couple of years in their marketplace team, helping basically UK European sellers sell online. Covered a variety of categories, had an amazing time doing so, and as a result, had the privilege of seeing literally thousands of FBA businesses. Was the proud owner of my own private label brand whilst at Amazon, so kind of went through a lot of the processes that sellers we speak to go through. Eventually sold that, and look, let me set the scene. I was in a shoebox apartment in New York, having a great time, and then coronavirus hit New York quite badly. And I was then found myself sort of confined to my bedroom, and not having a great time at all. And it kind of made me really reevaluate kind of what I wanted to do and kind of where I saw my strengths. Anyway, saw what was going on in the US, saw the companies that you know too well, really progressing. I thought this looks really interesting. Spoke with Ollie. We had a lot of back and forth over email. Spoke with lots of investors. Had thousands of no's, despite the fact this was clearly doing extremely well in the US. They just didn't like the idea at all. This was kind of more February time of 2020. Anyway, fast forward, met an amazing group of investors. I've hired an awesome team, and here we are, as you said, based in London, with a team across investments, supply chain operations, creative, and yeah, we acquire brands all over the world and grow them. And so yeah, it's been an amazing journey. It's been an absolute roller coaster. I tell you this. I'm a first-time founder, right? So this is all for me, totally new, super exciting experience. Made thousands of errors, but also had tons of successes as well. So, yeah, it's been a great journey.
Well, thanks for telling us that. And that's kind of curious too, right? Is you getting into the space, you recognize the opportunity, but this is just over a year ago. This is 16 months or so that you and your brother Ollie were throwing around this idea. Is that from the outside perspective can seem both this is not a negative thing, concerning, but also crazy to think that all of this happens in such a condensed time frame. What's it been like to kind of put together the skeleton, if you will, the basis of this company and scale so quickly at the rate of what you guys are trying to do and what you have to do to be honest and successful and to stand out from the crowd?
Yeah, it's super challenging, right? So I think, the trouble is, what slightly frustrates me is, there are all these massive fundraisers you see. And the reality is, raising capital is so difficult. Like, it's so challenging. There's a ton of work that goes on behind the scenes, working with lawyers, with investors, with different team members. It's super tough. I think for me, the challenge of growing Olsam, and where I highly respect other operators in the space who've been able to do this, is building a great operations team. That's not to say the other teams are not important, but running Amazon brands are really, really difficult. Like, it's the first I told our investors, like, this is not easy, and a lot of people are getting involved because they think it looks very easy. It's not. It's super challenging. So for me, I found the biggest challenge, hiring an amazing sort of operations team to run the brands across supply chain, across PPC, across branding, that know and get Amazon really well. And I think, the problem is that this talent's in hot demand. Lots of companies want people who know Amazon. So you're fighting for talent. And so I think, the biggest challenge to me has been building that team. But what I think we've really done, we're very fortunate, is that, as you said, I used to work for Amazon in the marketplace team. So I've managed to, hire a couple of my fellow colleagues who are crazy enough to join us on this journey. And as a result, we've got just such, and our understanding of FBA brands is so deep now. I'm truly.
So you said you work on. I'm going to cut you off there, Sam, real quick. You said you work on the marketplace team. Like Amazon has all these different little I call them pods. I like to think Amazon's like, they don't talk to each other, and probably they do. This is my interpretation. They have all these different segments and markets that you're going to be working in. What's a marketplace team? Like, describe for our listener who might be like, what's a marketplace team on Amazon's view? Is that cultivating, bringing brands onto Amazon? Is that just making sure that the experience is great? What's that look like on that side of things?
I think the first thing in general, like Amazon has their consumer business. So you've got the retail business and you've got the marketplace business. And I can't speak on behalf of North America, but in the UK, the team is around 130 people. Or well, when I was there anyway, it's now probably even bigger. And they sit across various functions, but broadly speaking, they're split by category. So consumables, hard lines, DIY and tools, basically the product category you're selling in. And then within that, you've got teams that recruit brand new sellers and bring them onto Amazon. And you've also got another team who basically nurture and grow existing sellers. And the aim of them is to then push sellers onto new products, FBA, SFP, things like this. So it's actually a very, very small team for the size of the UK marketplace.
Right.
So yeah.
So yeah, UK marketplace is what we've touted on this podcast, and the data represents not maybe but half of what the United States represents in terms of volume and opportunity, but like that continues to grow and develop. It was on pace. I would say it was definitely maybe 2A or 2B right now behind Germany, if that makes sense. I think that would be a fair assessment, just based upon Brexit and all the changes around that, and people have kind of figured out if they want to continue to grow in the UK or not. We're talking about international expansion now, but or in different marketplaces. That to me sounds like that's your ticket into understanding above and beyond what these other companies might be looking at, in terms of, if I'm a brand and I want to know that, and this is pretty prevalent on your website, I like how it's our responsibility to take your brand, cultivate it and grow it and make you happy behind it. And I think that's a really cool concept of, trust us with something that you grow, you put your sweat equity in, and then we're going to take it and make it something that maybe you don't have the time, the money, or the effort to do. And we're going to make you pleased with that outcome. Like, take your vision and grow it. Is that kind of the philosophy at the end of the day?
It is. I mean, I think, look, the thing is that, because I've done this before, like I have my own brand and I've scaled it to a point. So I understand what sellers are going through when it comes to this exit process. And it is so difficult to take a brand to 0 to $1 million in turnover. I think people underappreciate how tough that is. And so when it comes to the exit, like, it's so stressful. It's so personal. And the truth is, the only thing in your mind is, are these people going to mess it up? Like, do they actually know what they're doing? And can they truly execute and grow on the business as I want them to? So, what we always try and say is, we've been through the process, so we get it. And, second to that, we really, really care, because, Ryan, one of the things that I think has blown me away by this space is word of mouth is everything, right? People speak a lot. There's a lot of conversation internally. And the reality is, if you are unpleasant to a seller or completely bomb a brand, it makes for a challenging conversation, I'm sure, down the line with sellers who undoubtedly will know the business owner you spoke to, I feel.
Right. Oh, I was for you, that's an interesting concept too, as well, because I know that there's lots of brands. So there's always this internal struggle, right? We've had brokers, we've had private equity, we've had small boutique, SMBs, in terms of they'll operate and they'll just purchase outright, not just brands on Amazon, but also SaaS solutions, also just any sort of other tech solution that they could be selling as well. Mm-hmm. This just seems to be really the hot topic. I say hot topic, it's been going on for a year and a half, but a lot of people maybe now have a new goal in mind, right? If they want to exit, they know that there's that capability of taking it and turning that into something of their biggest asset into a paycheck now, and trying it all over again. The news is catching up with that. There's so much more buzz around it in terms of that regards. So what's kind of the positives in this space right now? Is it because a lot of people might think, oh, this is great because a lot of people can reward small SMBs basically for their hard work. They can just take that and duplicate it on a higher level.
Mm-hmm.
What are the pros to working with, I would call it like an aggregator or a business entity that is acquiring brands like yours?
I think just taking a step back from the aggregator point, I think what's cool about what's happened in the last year, or say, longer, 18 months, is that actually, I think we're seeing almost a professionalization of the marketplace, right? You're seeing sellers get really sophisticated in the tools they use, the insights they can gather. And this has led to like a proliferation of kind of service agencies and offerings, I think, what didn't exist in the past. So actually, I think now, despite massive macro problems, the headwinds that businesses are facing, actually, there's quite an interesting supportive ecosystem that sits above this, be it around payments, Olsam, returns handling, customer service, offshoring, like incredible infrastructure that wasn't there before. So I think actually, like, sellers it's easier now. I'm not saying it's super easy, but it's easier to really, if you want to scale your business effectively. I think, the benefit, I think, of working with an aggregator, well, as a seller, it depends on what you want in the next owner of your business. And an aggregator may not be
sure.
perfect. But I think for me, what I love is that I have specialists in my team with like 20 years experience in supply chain, in 3PL forecasting, demand planning, cross-border logistics. That's pretty cool. I was so bad at that when I was doing my brand. So to have someone tell me, Sam, we're going to buy your brand. And by the way, our head of supply chain has worked in Shenzhen for a couple of years. He's worked for DHL for many years. Like, he knows supply chain. It's pretty awesome. In the same way that, it's the same for creative. It's the same for PPC. It gives me reassurance. I would say the downsides, and there are always downsides. Let's be honest about it. Like, I think sellers might think their brand kind of might be like a very small fish in a big pond, and they kind of, would rather have their brand give it to one owner. I totally appreciate that as well. So I think it depends on what you're after. But in my view, I just love that, like, I can have full confidence that I have specialist functions in my company that essentially, are purely focused on growing that particular part of the business.
So what's kind of your guys's? Yeah, I say your guys, you and Ollie, when you came together, you probably had an end goal in mind, right? There's probably like we start from nothing. We have to start acquiring brands from day one. Yeah. What was that conversation like with your first brand that you acquired? Was it exciting? Was it nerve-wracking? Were you a mess? Did that go smoothly?
No, it was cool. I think, look, he was an awesome seller. I think, we were pretty honest about one, like, we knew how to run. I knew how to run brands. So, but we were honest about how early we were in our journey, and it was very fortuitous that actually he quite liked the fact that essentially his business would literally be our pure passion and focus to get us going, and it was an amazing learning experience through the process. And they're a great team. But no, to be completely honest, like, yeah. There's a ton that goes into the migration of an Amazon brand. I think that should be emphasized. It's quite complicated. If you get it wrong, it can be disastrous. And then there were tons of learnings about, handing over PPC campaigns, supply chains, all the complexity involved. So it was, to be honest, pretty wild journey. But I think if you spoke to any aggregator and you asked them, how was it your first 5? I think that everyone would say it was a pretty steep learning curve.
They had a bag in the corner and they were hyperventilating in the corner or something like that. So it's probably something similar concept. I know I would be. Well, that's the thing. It's like you're a salesperson at this point, right? You're actually trying to acquire a business, maybe competing with 10, 20, 30 different offers. I've heard a lot of different brands that have really high expectations and that will offer either like, in various capacities of like lowball, how you pay out, what that looks like and how they're selling that journey. It sounds like that marketplace and all those conversations you're having is just almost like a salesperson, right? You're trying to sell what you can do with that business, but at the end of the day, there's a paycheck tied to it. What's it like knowing that, I'm assuming this has happened to you since you're still handling like day-to-day, right? Acquisition, talking to brands, and when that, final agreement comes in, what's it like knowing that your offer isn't strong enough? You see someone come in and they offer double than what you guys and your team is doing, and you're walking away and you see that brand on Amazon now. Is there a sense of like remorse or guilt, or is it like I couldn't do that to our investors, or I couldn't believe that's what they offered, and congratulations to the brand, but is there that sense of self-worth, or like I'm trying to go on the philosophical side of things? Is it hard on you when you see somebody win over your offer in that regards? Like, did I miss something?
Yeah, no, I think, the first thing to say is, I'm not, because I'm not on so much on the investment side, it's more Ollie side, but we both always try and join seller calls. It matters so much to us when we speak with sellers to understand the why of why they started it and why they're exiting. It's also important because for us, and I think for sellers as well, it's just such a personal journey that if you don't get on, or I sense it's going to be a tricky experience for both parties, then I think we kind of need to reevaluate for sure. But I think in general, in terms of the deal structure, I mean, we've had it in the past where an offer's come in and it is way above our offer. I mean, like not even close. And we have a great investments team here who do a ton of modeling, both on deal structuring, and way more about essentially the forward-looking view of these brands. And I've got to be honest, right? Like sometimes they can't quite understand the mechanics behind the deal, but we always think that our offers are fair, and if we really, really love a brand, and we think we are the right acquirer to take that brand even further, better than other acquirers, then we're happy to pay above and beyond. It really depends, but all I hope is that if we don't win the deal, that seller has chosen the right buyer. I just hope that's the case, because we don't want us to choose the wrong one and then end up during due diligence and it's just a nightmare. Everyone's not happy. So.
Right. At the end of the day, I know everyone really needs somebody that needs, they need the capacity in terms of they need to still be profitable, right? And I like the concept when I hear from an aggregator that says, hey, maybe we didn't raise as much as some of these other companies, but you know what? We're going to work hard at the brands and the businesses that we do acquire, and we're going to all of a sudden establish and make sure that they're profitable and that they're scalable in that capacity. Is there a methodology behind how much to acquire at once, instead of having this, hey, there's an offer being made and an acquisition being made every 5 days, every week? I think the stats are so misleading, because that seems like a quantity play and almost throwing spaghetti at a wall and seeing what actually sticks, and then letting statistics kind of work themselves out. Like, hey, we can make it work. If it's not actually profitable, it's just a line item on our balance sheet that says that's a net loss. We'll either sell it off to another aggregator, which I'm assuming is potentially happening behind the scenes, or it's even, they iterate that brand into something even further, and you just kind of treading water at that point.
Yeah, no, I think so. I mean, look, our perspective is, we don't have it's not a volume play. I have to be honest, we're not acquiring the volume I think that others are doing, but when we are acquiring, I guess, more brands that we think within our quality criteria, purely because I think some acquirers, not all, but some, might face operational challenges, perhaps in 6 months down the line, a year, when they have all these brands. They're super challenging to run, and we'd rather essentially acquire slower and choose very carefully the assets we have under management. That's just our own perspective. But no, you're right for sure. Like the numbers for some of these are incredible. I read the sort of two, 3 a week. Which is amazing. That's not how we work.
So with that being said, is it safe to say that there, with the sheer velocity, and I think that this is such a cool and unique space, I always want to learn more about the mindset behind brands. I don't think this is different than the business world, right? It would be as if I am a mom and pop store and I have a competitor and they're actually acquiring me because of the market that I'm building. They're growing my customer base, or they're acquiring my customer base. They're acquiring my marketing wherewithal, my brand assets, and then my inventory and just supply chain operation. That just happens to transition over into a purely digital play. So in that context, what's kind of the growth mindset of Olsam in your group? Because I know that a lot of people like to say international growth is number one. We're going to make sure this brand is in every marketplace imaginable where it makes sense and it's profitable. Two would then be like either retail or wholesale. and then kind of building that out. And then even that could be a factor, but then also it almost makes sense to me that some of these companies like yours would make sense and develop your own product launches and skill sets, because you're bringing such amazing minds together. Almost makes sense for you to develop your own product where you see a hole in the marketplace and kind of go after it in that regard. Is that a fair assumption, or is that something that's you have talked internally?
Yeah, so I think what's super interesting is, again, like every acquirer has almost, I would say, their different strengths. Like some's natural background is supply chain, and I've read some incredible stories of that supply chain operations experience. Some are more PPC, some are more, branding. Like for us, the things that we focus on is localizing brands in Europe, because one of the things we see is is managing, translating bullet points from the US and having them auto translated or translated through to the Germany often is actually very complicated, because you're having to localize the keywords. So for us, it's around localization of marketing is a huge play on back-end keywords, front-end bullet points, as well as just general marketing. Second to that is then localized PPC. Again, it's a whole new way of a whole new raft of PPC and keyword and campaign structures in Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. And again, like how these campaigns are structured will vary, because German customers browse a lot more. So your ad spend it could be way higher than say in France or Italy. So for us, a big play is localizing brands in Europe, and we can do that just purely because we've got a team who speak the language. So that's a first. I think in terms of the additional plays, like we love certainly new product development, right? So we've got in our team, we've got a guy who's a triple Amazon FBA seller, incredible entrepreneur. He's come in and it's helping us basically with new product launch and development. Again, super hard to execute right. I can't stress that enough. It's like sourcing the right product, getting the right, getting the PO in, marketing correctly, launching the product. It's super challenging. So again, for this role, we brought in a guy who's done it 3 times to basically lead this business for us. And again, yes, we love adding new selection. What I'm super excited about, and this is one we're looking at further down the line, is incubating our own brands and really finding niches where we think we can. We've seen perhaps a business that wasn't right for us, but actually that's a really cool niche, and we should look more broadly at that. So tons of areas. There are the obvious ones. You said there is obviously international expansion, but again, it's actually quite hard to do effectively. It's not easy. There's So I hope that answers your question. Yeah. So I'm rambling.
You're not rambling. I think there's a lot of components in the mix, right? It's not as simple as throwing them into different international marketplaces. It's a little bit tough to figure out each marketplace, like you said, localizing, making sure the listings and optimized depending on where you're selling. One of my favorite episodes was talking through Japan and the PPC wherewithal of selling in Japan. Knowing that there's 4 campaigns for every single one product is somewhat mind-boggling to me, to know that you have to speak 4 different languages just for one marketplace and hit all those different components that make sense to that localized audience. But you're talking to 1 billion plus people, right? In Japan and in Asia. But then there's also other components that I think is fascinating in the space too, is that you said that all this talent is being acquired, or this coming together and saying, hey, we actually have the wherewithal to build our own brands and kind of scale our own companies, to a seller who's like maybe by themselves. That might be a scary thing, because they're saying, hey, all of a sudden there's all these major corporations that have the money, the power, and the wherewithal to maybe take over a certain category or space. It's not as simple as just there's only going to be 10 companies that are running Amazon Marketplace, right? What do you say to a seller who's saying there's still opportunity, you can do it yourself, or you just happen to be doing it at scale and there's opportunity amassed throughout the world?
Yeah, look, I think the really exciting thing about, and the common challenge we had, when we were trying to raise funding for this business was, but is Amazon really that big? Like, is it actually that big, the opportunity? And I say, so then we built this map of where Amazon was actually operating, and then also the emerging marketplace they were going to launch or had launched. So if you look at Europe, and I say, right, to a European seller, to a US seller, and you're looking to come to Europe, what are you thinking about? And often the answer is Germany. Great, Germany is an obvious one. And you might think pan-Europeans, and you think Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. But then now there's Poland, there's Sweden. There are a few others that I know that I'm not going to say because I shouldn't know, but they are coming on. There's Turkey. There are many, many marketplaces. We don't even sell on some of them. Like Turkey, none of our brands are on Amazon Turkey. I'd love to get them on there. But I think, just taking Amazon by itself, I think the market opportunity is huge. And undoubtedly filled with it's complicated, and it's not as easy as saying I can launch a brand in Turkey. But I think there's a huge opportunity outside of on the Amazon marketplace. I would say the feedback I've had, Ryan, from the guys from Olsam who went to Prosper was there's such an exciting opportunity off Amazon, and particularly on Walmart and kind of on your own channel. And obviously we all know about this kind of brand referral programs and trying to push traffic back onto Amazon. So I think I'm super pumped after hearing what the guys are saying about the off Amazon opportunity. And for us, it's that is a whole new realm, and again, something that we can't wait to explore. So yeah, Amazon's huge, but again, like the off Amazon part is also equally as exciting.
So what's a marketplace that Amazon might be missing right now? Is there one in the world that is just a glaring gap right now in terms of where they should be and where there could be a potential crazy opportunity, whether it be because there's an amount of people, or it's just the logistics don't match up yet, or it's still emerging? Is there anything outside of like Europe that you think Amazon might be missing currently?
Well, I couldn't speak on. I'm sure the marketplace growth team is looking very closely at opportunities to launch in, aside from like regulatory barriers or blockers to scaling the logistics business. I think Poland is a really interesting one, and I'm really excited to see how Amazon Poland takes off, because Allegro is I've been reading the stats about it in their largest marketplace, and it's absolutely amazing. And I think we are looking very closely at our brands there and how we're about to launch one there. So I think for Amazon Poland, it's a super exciting opportunity. I'm following Amazon Australia quite closely. Some of my old colleagues, they moved to Australia and helped launch the FBA business there a couple of years ago. And initially there was a lot of fanfare around, what are these guys doing? Like, it's an absolute flop. First Prime Day was not a success. But again, I'm following that market really closely, and we get contacted by quite a lot of Australian sellers, who are selling internationally, but now selling in Amazon.au. So again, really, really intrigued by that one. So look, yeah, tons of opportunity. I'm super interested by the emerging marketplaces. Singapore is a really interesting one. I know in Southeast Asia, there are lots of aggregators cropping up there, but the challenge for these guys is that these sellers trade across multiple marketplaces. The Shopee, Lazada, there are many. It's a very fragmented ecosystem, and Amazon is really not the main one. So I'm fascinated to see how that plays out. So yeah.
Do you ever think that the aggregator space we wouldn't call it aggregator, that would be focused off of Amazon? Do you think that would ever emerge? Like you mentioned, a lot of these are on different marketplaces, whether it be on eBay, being still very successful around Europe as well as Australia, APAC, or SPAC, Southeast Pacific, Asian countries. Do you ever think that one will be just like the establishing dominance of, we want a brand that will be off of Amazon, therefore we can grow, maybe potentially even on Amazon? Is that, or for almost like a reverse path, if you will, for a lot of the business models that we're seeing now?
So I had a really interesting conversation with someone on exactly this question. They're very in the D2C space. And the thing about acquiring direct consumer brands, and I know there are companies out there trying to become the next X of acquiring D2C brands. The challenge of acquiring D2C brands is that there's a ton of IT and back-end operational complexity that goes along with this. That you the more you move into the D2C space, you realize just how much of the heavy lifting Amazon does. So let me just take one example, right? So let's say we acquire a German D2C brand that trades across Europe, and they trade in France and Germany, Italy, and Spain. For us then, for that one D2C site, we have to then take care of essentially 5 different returns languages, 5 returns cross-border transaction problems. We're dealing with, again, probably having different 3PLs in the 5 different jurisdictions, and then 5 different VAT requirements, and then there's just so much complexity. We're then having to obviously then own these customers in the different geographies, and therefore there are different customer acquisition and retention campaigns. It's really complicated. So I think, I think it's awesome, and I think, if you are focusing only in, say, one country, my understanding is that from an IT and operation perspective, it's a bit simpler. But our head of IT, we spoke about this as a team. When are we moving to D2C as a focus? And the challenge, the pushback was, in Europe, there's just so much operational complexity of running that, and Europe is just better to kind of focus on the Amazon's perspective for the time being.
Since you work for Amazon, is it scary? Is it scary to rely on a majority of knowing that Amazon could potentially change the marketplace or the terms quite rapidly? And you've probably seen this firsthand. I know that's a frustration for lots of sellers trying to navigate the field. I know it's, hey, play ball with the big boys. It's just part of business. It's part of just ebbing and flowing with these businesses. But at scale, is it difficult to kind of know that lots of your revenue is coming from a platform, if you will, that can change almost without any sort of notification, and you have to all of a sudden switch out either inventory levels at a fast pace, trying to figure out if your listing is shut down. There's no like continuity, which it seems that you can predict or plan for as well as one may want to.
Yeah. Yes. I think when I was working there, Ryan, like I had it.
I heard it in your voice, man. I heard it. It was
it's a fear. I sort of went into this. I told Ollie, I was like, my biggest worry here is actually what could happen with our brands that we acquire, and somewhere they can just get shut down. Like, I manage businesses, Ryan, and some of these were pretty large, and they were turned off overnight. And I spoke with some sellers who were literally crying to me on the phone, and it was our job internally to understand what was the reason, why did it happen, how you meant to basically resolve it. And I've seen the really ugly side of this, and it's super challenging. So yes, going into this business, you should be completely aware that it is a beast you're dealing with, and it is black and white. There is no gray. And sometimes, they might perceive your white as black, and then suddenly you find yourself penalized for something that you didn't even think was wrong. So internally, we have a wiki in Olsam that has all the things essentially that could happen, and if they do happen, why does it happen and what to do, that we just know from experience. So yes, to your point, I've seen the ugly side of it, and I'm acutely aware of it. And to be honest, it hasn't happened yet, but it will happen when something really, really bad happens, and we have to deal with that. So it makes me even more keen to focus on the off Amazon opportunity as quickly as possible for the brands where it's relevant, right? So, as I said to you, I'm super excited by the Walmart opportunity and the off Amazon opportunity, because the reality is, if you are fully dependent on this marketplace, you are exposed, and it's quite risky. So yeah, totally agree.
Well, I've heard even a lot of even in the aggregator space are out looking at solely dependent on Amazon, which I find fascinating. But the other concept, and I like to think of this in economics in general, how long are you expecting a product or brand to be relevant in a marketplace like Amazon? Because let's say, for example, you see the fidget spinner, you see it's iterated, it's this wave of great revenue and growth. It lasts maybe a year or two. Then you'll see it peter out. It's not really as big or as dominant or as trendy as it might once be. What's kind of the expectation for you or your internal team to think like, hey, this product has a shelf life of maybe if it's in this category, it's a shelf life of 3 years. Maybe we need to iterate it or change it up or bring another, or, is there an expectation for that? Or is that just kind of business as general?
I think this is a really interesting question. Like, the cyclicality of brands on Amazon is one that we watch very closely. And in some categories, typically the categories we wouldn't really invest in, there is a life cycle of a brand. And typically this is because the barrier to entry for that particular sub niche is very low. So you'll have fierce competition to basically launch and rank a product. So when we look at brands we've acquired, we look at how sustainable is that position long term. And there are various ways we can quantify that and qualify that. But I totally agree. I think where you make the wrong acquisitions is where you suddenly find a brand that was once top of a BSR rank for its sub niche is suddenly finding market share erosion month on month, day on day, they're just losing sales because it's just how fierce the competition is on Amazon. So I think that is probably the biggest risk with this business model. And I think you need to be very careful about what sub niches you target, because the most popular ones, I'm going to say one, for example, consumer electronics, it's so fiercely intense and it's really hard to maintain a category leading position for, I mean, we've seen brands go for like a month, 3 months, a year, and then they just peter off. So I think, I think a brand like Anchor is an exception, and it's extremely hard to sort of build a brand like that. So yeah, that's a really interesting topic. We talk a lot about that.
So is there another sort of conversation to be had around maybe not just off Amazon, but in general, what you're acquiring and just the iterations that could potentially come from that brand, like what it represents, right? You can have a home. I'm not sure all the brands that you guys acquire, and I'm not sure if that's like public knowledge, but is that maybe why you're starting to see the emerging markets for specific, like for Intrinsic, for example, like that's a name that specifically is focusing on, and they're an aggregator company, as you may know, they're only focusing on health and wellness. And that's because they've worked with other sorts of products out there in the retail space. That's their bread and butter. We know for a fact that as different come to market, we can actually put our hat on that and say that this is who we represent. If you're health and wellness, come talk to us because we know how to grow those and iterate those. Is that maybe where you're going to start to see lots of different companies move towards either a specific niche focus, or say, hey, we're good at taking a brand, putting it into Walmart, retail, or just growing it on Amazon? Or are you going to see, we'll take everyone approach, and that's kind of, iterate and grow from there, and that's where they live? Is there, I won't say there's a right way to do it. Is there a way that you kind of forecast this space going, maybe?
Yeah, I think the space will evolve depending on what sellers value. And my view is, and my long-term view is, that as this ecosystem develops, as cost per CPCs and advertising continue to increase, I think sellers long-term will place a higher value on the off-Amazon expertise and the off-Amazon potential of the business for a couple of reasons. One is long-term sustainability of revenues, but two, really, it's often an area that's more complex and perhaps an area that sellers haven't really managed to explore. And my personal view is, this is just one for us, is that that's an area we're going to invest in, because I think that's a highly valuable position to tell a seller, we have deep expertise in Walmart, deep expertise in retail with Target and a few other large retailers in the US. It's very hard to build that skill set in-house. If you have it, it's very valuable. I think the idea of targeting sub niches, I think it's an interesting one. And to be honest, do I think sellers value that? Probably. I think some probably will. I think, to be honest, as long as a seller is, as long as an acquirer is operationally very capable at supply chain, at PPC, at branding, I think right now there's no urgent demand for that. However, again, as I said, I think the acquirers and the specialisms that acquirers market are going to be very much driven by sellers. And I think what would be so interesting to see in Prosper next year, what are sellers talking about as being like the key value driver? And I think it's going to be off Amazon is where I think the big focus will be. And so that for us is a big focus.
How important is it for partnerships for a company like yours to not just have to build it from scratch, but having to rely on expertise of like other businesses out there, whether it's like translations or any sort of like localization or copywriting? Is it easier to rely on partnerships, or would you rather have all that in-house and know your team is all on the same page in that regards?
Yeah, good question. I think that we've had some fantastic experiences working with third parties, and as I said to you at the beginning of the call, this proliferation of aggregators has meant there's been almost like a professionalization of service offerings, and I think there are some great third parties out there. We've had not superb experiences in the past with some, but I think for some areas, like for example, returns handling and refunds and things like this, and kind of reimbursements, amazing services out there. That's not something we do in house, but fantastic. Again, Usually any areas with a customer, we like to keep in-house. So customer service, we like to internalize it. Anyone who communicates with our customers, we like to own that relationship where possible. But for sure, so some areas we use some great third parties. But I think there's a long way to go. I think there are still opportunities to plug niches. And what I've heard from Prosper is there's a service for pretty much every sort of possible problem you face. I know David from our team, he came back with a huge list of amazing tools and people he spoke to that we should be connecting with. So I'm all for it. I think partnerships are fantastic. And I think in this industry, they're so important because people talk a lot, they like to network, they like to share ideas. And to be honest, we're all for that. And we love speaking with specialists.
What's your pitch to an entrepreneur to start on Amazon even nowadays? Do you still talk to people who you have a day-to-day conversation with, maybe that says, I don't know if Amazon's the right place for us to grow? What's that conversation like for you, and how are you selling the Amazon experience still, even till this day, as prices to enter are going up for brands? Is there a conversation, and what are you telling people?
I'll put on my hat from my Amazon days, and you're a seller. No, I think the reality is that the marketplace is so big, it's constantly expanding. All the numbers. I'm not going to sort of regurgitate them to you, but there's always a sub niche that you can plug, and the customer base is so broad and so vast that there's always an opportunity and a customer right for you. I would say that. And it's quite funny because our team, they look at so many interesting opportunities, but sometimes we chat after work and we think like, oh, what would I do if I was a seller? What product would I sell? And we've got tons of ideas. I would say, as a seller joining now, list down the things that you're great at and list down the things you're really bad at and you don't enjoy. And I would say for all the ones that you're not very good at, outsource to someone who's better, who's a professional. And I think principally for me anyway, that was supply chain. So supply chain, have a VA or someone who's fantastic at supply chain to help you with that function. And then I would say, find a really niche in a sub niche, and there are lots. And then come up with a brand you've seen typically in D2C or in retail, and essentially try and emulate that. And that's what I do with my brand. But I think think about as a seller and as a first-time entrepreneur entering the space is longer term. Like you ultimately want to exit this business, so think about what you need to do in order to build that. And there's a whole world. There are lots of podcasts on what to do in that respect, but do think about the long-term success of the brand and how you can make it defensible in the long term.
Since you spoke about branding, I've asked this a couple times to people, but I don't know if I've asked a person who's in charge of aggregation in general. How important is a brand that puts like a lot of emotion or puts the face of an individual as part of that brand? Is that valuable to a brand in your eyes, or is that something that you can't replicate internally? So if you were to purchase that brand, if I'm a seller and I know for a fact, like if I'm Ryan's hardware store or something like that, and I have a really good selection of products, but they know that my name's tied to it, my face is on the brand or logo or whatever that might be. It would be a terrible idea, but for example purposes, what would be kind of your thought around that? Is that something that sellers should maybe separate themselves from, or should they more, is that valuable to even a business like yours?
Do you know what? I have very strong views on this because like my personal opinion is, customers, aside from reviews, which is obviously a key driver, customers buy the why of your product, not the what. So if you're a seller, you're Ryan Spatulas and I'm Olsam Spatula, and I am just, there is no why behind my story, but your why is you are a budding chef who came up with this amazing brand to deal with a problem you face, and you grinded really hard, and then you launched your own restaurant, and these are the products you created with your own restaurant. That story speaks so much more than mine. And so I think with sellers, build a brand about you and why you. So for example, we came across a business that they made loo roll for RVs, and it was literally paper toweling. But the story behind the why and who they were, husband and wife, kids, traveling, digital nomads, I was like, this is sick. I love this story. I told Ollie, I was like, I want this brand. These guys are awesome entrepreneurs. Customers love them because whilst it was just loo roll, toilet roll, customers were like, great story, love the founders, like amazingly soft paper. Was it any softer? I mean, it was soft, but I don't know if it was any softer. So the why is so important. And, we work with entrepreneurs where they've slightly gone, no, I think it's more about the quality of the product and it's more about just like telling the customer what it is, which is true, but never underestimate the story of who you are and how you got the brand to where it is, because it's seriously hard and customers really, really value it. So yeah, my personal opinion is yes, it matters so much.
So how do you put a price point on that? Because they're no longer going to be operating, right? It would be you. Yeah. How do you quantify something as difficult as maybe like a feeling that you get when you purchase a product? Because the story, it's unquantifiable. There's no metric that says like it does better than Charmin or any other sort of like name brand out there. Like you said, all these, loo roll or whatever that might be. No slight to your brother, but just how do you quantify that in terms of measuring how that's going to factor in your payout or your terms or just your growth to your board or anything like that? You're like, hey, I really felt that this has a quantifiable metric. Don't know what that is, but trust us in that regard. Does that make sense?
I think just a couple of points to unpack there. I think my first point around just like the value of a defensible story and narrative is can't be undervalued. So for us, that value would probably be placed in the longer term of, where we can take this product, what new markets can we take this product to, where else will customers connect with this brand. So yes, it would attract a high multiple. And to be honest, we did bid very highly on this brand, but someone else loved it even more than us. So they took it for us, but it's doing well. It's great to see. But I think, the other question I would love to get your view on this is, and a common challenge we get is if you take these passionate owners, these founders out of a brand, does it take away the soul, the heart of the business? Like, can you actually execute and grow the business without them? And Ryan, what do you think?
If you're asking my thoughts, well, I think it depends on how involved the founders are, right? Or how maybe involved they are afterwards. I'm trying to think of some exciting, because when you think of certain brands, you might think of individuals, right? And that's a good thing. If they're selling the likeness of their story, I think I think a lot of people like the story behind the founders and what it represents, right? At the core, like I think a lot of people don't think like, hey, this person's going door to door to sell these products. But I think the basis of if you can, at the heart of everything you do, honor that thought process behind it. I don't know. I guess it depends on the company and growth, because if let's say worst case scenario, this brand gets put on the desk of somebody out of college or a new account manager, and they're going to be running the growth. Is that person going to care as much as that individual when they were growing from nothing all the way to something? Probably not. It's not matched. But if you're cultivating an environment where everyone's on the same page and it's your due diligence to represent them moving forward, I think you can to a degree. I don't think it would be 100%, but I think if that is at the mindset of what you're doing, I know people have stayed away from those brands because it is difficult to do. But if you understand where they're coming from and then you know the story and how that can grow, I think you could potentially do that, as long as you keep that at the forefront of what you're doing, whether it's all eco-friendly products or, hey, our daughter had cancer and now a portion of these proceeds go to cancer research or something like that. I've seen a lot of brands put money back into what makes them passionate and why they do these products. So I think if you can cultivate that going forward, I should say, I think that could be replicated to a degree and still build on that brand. So if that answers your question, that would be my personal opinion.
Yeah, no, I think it depends on the category and then the subcategory. I think some require such a niche understanding and specialism that I just couldn't possibly tell the seller that our team could take that on and manage it within 3 months. Like, I just don't think it's possible. But I think some, and especially in our team, and depending on how other acquirers are structured, you can, if you build the right mentality and you make the brand managers almost like, CEOs of these brands, and you reward and incentivize in the right way, I do think it's possible. And I tell you, and we have the sellers come in here, and the sellers tell these brand managers their story. We have like face-to-face meetings here, and these brand managers meet these owners, and you see the passion they have. It's infectious. And actually, they work very closely for a period, like a handover period, and then obviously, depending on how the deal is structured, it might be they step back. But that's what we found works really well, bringing the two parties together and just seeing this owner be like, I've got this idea, like you need to do this. Like it is possible. So yeah.
Well, sometimes I think too, maybe Amazon's not the place that you build that brand, right? You're talking about the exciting natures of building a direct-to-consumer brand, whether it's off their own website or even just telling that story into different marketplaces. Branding on Amazon has been fascinating to me, because if I'm a consumer and I'm just looking for a solution, am I going to search for that brand? Probably not, but the awareness comes after the fact. They know that once you buy that product, that's where brand recognition really kicks in. I think if you're driving lots of people, like Anchor, for example, like that's a name brand that lots of people obviously know that they don't know it stemmed from Amazon, but they know what that represents and know where you can go to purchase it. They built that off of on their own websites now. It all kind of just ties to the title, but branding's hard on Amazon. I think it's very difficult. I've heard people like Kevin King, for example, who's fantastic at branding and growing fantastic businesses on Amazon. And he touts, once you get to a certain functionality and search volume for your brand, then you've actually made it in terms of your brand has been successful on Amazon. So I think that there's a component of that. And instead of like toilet paper, you're looking at like Ollie's toilet paper roll or something like that. I think that's very fascinating in terms of what that metric actually means to people searching for that specifically on Amazon versus what it represents in terms of the feeling and wherewithal and what the company represents.
I do. I completely agree with you. I do.
So yeah, with that being said, Sam, so what's kind of the next part of this year? I know we've already talked an hour and I told you it breezed by, and I would talk to you all day about philosophical nature of Amazon and building brands, but what's kind of the next part of the year look like for you and your team? Is it more acquisitions? Is it just focusing on what we have here going forward? What's kind of the core focus on what you guys want to do and achieve for the rest of 2021?
Yeah, so look, this year is a really exciting one. I think, we have some really exciting news we're going to be sharing very soon.
Anything you can drop today?
No, I can't share it today. But then in terms of, we've got a couple more acquisitions we're looking at doing, some more sizable transactions. But to be honest, Ryan, I think Amazon sellers are facing cost pressures at every single angle. You've got container ships. The containers are out of control now. You've got, the inventory performance index scores that, to be honest, make it so difficult to grow brands. We're dealing with, raw material price increases. We're dealing with, Q4 surcharge rates and storage. There's tons of cost pressures. So our focus is executing on an amazing Q4, and finally honing in on our platform that we're building to make this running these seamlessly. Super important for us. So tons going on, but super exciting, and I've loved talking with you, and hope it's been an informative, fun session.
It's been fantastic, man. So I guess my final question for you is, how did Ollie get the first part of the name Olsam? How did he negotiate that with you?
We went back and forth. It was literally, I sort of thought, actually, do that. But Samuel was taken, unfortunately. So it was, I had to go with Olsam. But he's very happy he's got it. I can tell you that for free.
I was going to say, yeah, for a family that works together to put both of your names on it, that's pretty awesome. So we're talking about personal branding, and there we go. You even put your stamp of approval on it, but put your name literally and figuratively into the business. So that's awesome, Sam. Well,
it's a family business. Yeah.
Well, that's exciting. So I was going to say, is it just you two, or is there another brother or a sister that we're leaving out of this business? That's not. We have
actually. I'm one of 5 brothers, so there's a couple of others. Who are looking to get involved. I told them, like, there's enough risk as it is. Don't come in. But no, they're we got many brothers in our family, so it's they're all eagerly trying to see how they can they get in.
Throw them in a warehouse, do some manual labor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Or talk to some pliers or whatnot. So, hey, man, thanks so much for hopping on today. And it's been fantastic. I'm excited to see, like you said, a lot of news in this space in terms of like acquisitions and money being raised. I think that's just just the beginning, if you will, of what's to be saying. And I think innovation is super key in the space. I know you guys are working on that, and you found kind of this nice little sweet spot working in Europe, and then obviously brands in the United States. So I'm excited to see where you and the team kind of move forward from here.
Definitely. Can't wait. Can't wait.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sam, for hopping on today. And we'll catch you next time on Crossover Commerce.
Thanks, guys.
Yep, no problem. And then everyone, thank you so much for hopping in. I'm going to get rid of that. There you go. I always do this every time when I want to move on to the next graphic, if you will. Hey, it's hard to produce and do interviewing all in one, but we're going to get there. You would think I would have it down by episode 132, but sometimes my trigger is just not, or my finger is not quick enough to select the next graphic. But what do you think, everyone? What's kind of your expertise and or I should say thoughts on the aggregator space? What do you think it's going to be in the next 6 months, year or so? If you had conversations that prosper at any of these events, what was those conversations like? Are you more apt to sell your business to an aggregator or work with a broker? What's kind of your thoughts? I would love to hear what you think in the comment section, whether it's on the audio side with downloads, or if you're on the video side, you can put those in the comment section. So go ahead and drop those in there. Love to hear your thoughts. And of course, I forgot to ask Sam directly, but you can go ahead and check out Olsam in their group at awesomegroup.com. So make sure you check them out. That's going to be in the comments and the show notes as well. So if you ever check them out, look at their background, who's working with them, and what kind of opportunities that might exist with them, go ahead and check that out as well. So with that being said, this is Crossover Commerce. This is episode 132, a family affair, building brands and taking them to the next level. Thank you so much, Sam, and his team for hopping on Crossover Commerce. And we'll go ahead and catch you guys next time on another episode of Crossover Commerce. Take care.